Happy Friday. How's it going?
Great.
Oh boy. Robert Morales coming at you live here at Inside Production Studios in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, my name's Robert Morales from RCO Network. RCO Network, good people, better business, discovering the best of you. For the next few minutes, maybe an hour, 1 to 2, we're going to be talking to a very special guest about business, about life, and all this stress stuff that we're going through. And then shortly in between, we're going to be answering questions. So if you have any questions, make sure you kind of type it in the news feed, and we'll get to it as we get to it. So if you're watching us live right now, give us a little heart emoji because we love the loves. So, can I get a little heart over there?
A little heart.
And if you're watching us on the replay, hit the little wow emoji because wow, I can't believe you're not watching us live. So find us on ourceonetwork.com, at Our CEO Network on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. And I can show that real quick. All our leads there. But coming at you is a very special guest friend of mine. She is she has been a team clinical clinician providing individual and group counseling for SMI and dual diagnosis patients. She has a bachelor's of science in psychology. She has a master's of science in human services, mental health counseling, performed crisis and substance abuse assessments, certified in clinical trauma and domestic violence. She's a licensed associate counselor from the state of Arizona. Please welcome Miss April Brown.
Thanks, Robert.
You're like, we have a crowd here. You hear the crowd in the background?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We try to accommodate where we can. Yeah, settle down. We got to get the crowd settled. You know, they're excited to see you. Miss Brown.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hello. Thank you for coming and sharing your expertise with us here. So I'm glad you came because we're going to be talking about a subject matter that's somewhat of a challenge now because of our crisis and COVID and people re-entering the work. A lot of stress out there, right?
A lot of stress, yes.
So I guess the first kind of breakdown is tell us a little about yourself and why you're here, because we're not necessarily selling anything, right? You're not really
not necessarily selling anything. No, I'm here. Well, obviously I'm here because you invited me, but I also think that it's important for everybody who's listening, watching, just to understand that stress and anxiety, it's natural. It's something that happens to everyone. And right now is a really stressful time. People are having to completely recreate their life, basically. And I'm just hoping to offer some information, advice, coping skills, maybe some grounding techniques, maybe some resources to help everybody get through this and to re-enter the workplace, which is also going to be kind of scary, even though, you know, maybe something they've done for a long time, but it's going to be scary.
Yeah, and I think people encounter stress on different levels, different capacities. And like I said, the big one right now is affecting us personally. And, you know, with our CEO network, it is largely based on marketing and helping businesses. But the premise of us and what we do is personal development. And so really understanding who we are as people and moving forward in life and building on those strengths on us personally will help manifest into other facets of life, which is business and the things that we do. So before we really get into the knee deep of what we're here to do, disclaimer, right? We're not doctors. We're not psychologists. We're not going to be able to diagnose anything here. We're not WebMD, even though WebMD is probably a better place than us. But we're here to merely talk about different techniques and how to overcome some of our situations and maybe personal stress and anxiety. So I guess to start off with, what's the difference between a psychologist and a therapist? Because you do therapy, right?
Yeah. Psychologists, psychiatrists, they obviously they diagnose, prescribe meds. They have PhDs, obviously. Therapists, we provide counseling. We provide support, counseling, encouragement. We teach coping skills, depending on what type of therapy you practice, some EMDR, DBT type things, grounding techniques, just, you know, we're like friends to talk to, kind of, I guess is a good way to explain it. Most counselors don't prescribe meds. Most counselors have a bachelor's or master's degree. Obviously you can be private, you can have a private practice, which I'm working towards. Yay me. So
that's a future business there.
That's right. Hopefully by the end of the year.
And do you recommend, people in general, like I said, do you recommend ongoing therapy? I mean, personally, I mean, I recommend it, but is that something that you offer to people like in these experiences or experiences these things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I personally feel that everybody could benefit from some type of therapy or counseling. It's a really great way to just have like an outlet to vent, to get things off your chest. Even, I mean, there's even things like life coaches that you can engage with that help you with certain aspects of your life. But I think everybody just needs somebody to talk to that's not biased. It doesn't have a whole, it doesn't have a lot of information about your background that's not going to judge. It's really there like a sounding board type of a thing. I guess a best friend that's not going to judge you.
Well, a best friend will stay at least. There are time frames as far as like how much therapy you should or shouldn't get per week, right?
Depending on yeah, depending on what your needs are. I mean, you can see your therapist or counselor one time a week, once a month, every 2 weeks. Really, that is established by you and your counselor. That's really not, that's not something that's just like general for everybody, you know?
Are there different levels of stress that people experience?
Of course, yeah. There's good stress and bad stress. Um, there's stress. I mean, well, yeah, the levels of stress, like good stress would be something like if you're excited about something and looking forward to something, you're going to feel a little bit of apprehension and anxiety. You can't wait for it. Or there's bad stress, like if you have to stay home, you can't go to work, you lose your job, you're not getting any money coming in, or your child falls off his bike and breaks his arm. There's definitely different levels of stress, and how to deal with those levels of stress obviously is going to be different. You can use the same coping skills in different levels as well.
And you said coping skills because our history, I've known you for about 10 years now in a different capacity than our CEO network. We met when you moved from out of town and came to work for Child Protective Services.
Yeah.
And I was a unit supervisor and I got to train you, so to speak.
Yep.
I think you trained me more than I trained you, but
You're still in training, Robert.
I'm always in training. But I mean, it's just funny. Like, again, the way people cope with stress differently. And, can you describe some different coping? I think the go-to for a lot of people is wine. I see on Facebook all the time, everybody's like grabbing a bottle of wine out there. And I don't know if that's the most healthiest thing to do, you know?
There's tons of different coping skills that are really, and again, there's general coping skills, but there's coping skills that are developed just personally for you. So, I mean, obviously, yes, people do unfortunately drink and use substances, feeling like that's helping them cope. But there are other things that you can do. I mean, things like, I mean, taking a walk. That I know it sounds silly or maybe super simple, but I mean, that's a great coping skill. You're getting outside, you're getting some fresh air, you're getting some sun.
That's a vitamin D.
Huh?
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Taking a walk. You can, I know a lot of people use like journaling as a coping skill. I think it's a great coping skill, but just writing things down in general, just being able to like grab a notebook, a sticky note, a piece of paper, the things that are running through your head that are causing the anxiety, write them down on a piece of paper, get them out of your head and on paper. They're more easily managed that way. Calling a friend. Positive natural supports are great coping skills. And right now, I think more than ever, people are reaching out to friends and family members over the internet, FaceTiming, calling, emailing, text messaging, because we have the social distance. So that's another great coping skill, just being able to talk to somebody. And there are still providers out there, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists that are practicing and doing like webinars and telemed and over the phone. So you can still access those resources as well.
Yeah, and in your experience and the things that I've seen or at least heard you do and facilitate, you work with more of the severe populations, right? SMI, so for the people that don't know, severely mentally ill, people who are in deep crisis, suicide kind of ideations and stuff. So you kind of manage that part. And I don't know if it seems kind of silly to kind of go over these topical, because I think a lot of people out there really don't feel like their situation is big enough or severe enough to go see a therapist or counselor.
Sure.
Is there any suggestions or anything that you can kind of tell people, or what you think they should hear to kind of help them along in their times of stress and what they're going through too?
You're right. Right now I'm working with the severely mentally ill, but I've counseled all populations, general mental health, from children, adolescents, all the way up to the elderly. So really, like I said, everybody's anxiety level, everybody's stress level is going to be different. And if you're not feeling like you're at a level where you need to see a therapist or a counselor, I mean, just still engaging in some like relaxation techniques, some self-care. Everybody needs that, whether you think you are a counselor or need a counselor or whatever the case may be. It's important to always put yourself first. I mean, if you're not well, then no one in your family is going to be well. You need to take care of you first. You need to be your own your priority. So like I said, taking 10 minutes out of the day just to maybe go sit in a quiet place, listen to your favorite music for 2 or 3 songs. Just, I mean, simple things like that you can do at home, that you can do by yourself. And right now, with everybody being at home and having your kids at home from school and your spouses are home and things are probably chaotic and not normal, even though you're in your normal space with your normal people, it's not normal. It's still important to take time out of your day to be able to have some of that space. Because even though you're leaving the house and going to work, you're still having that time away from your normal people. So it's still important to create that space for yourself, even if it's 10 minutes a day. Taking a walk is a great one.
That seems to be the one. So if I could take just about 2 minutes, I want to get into some of the techniques and stuff that I think you wanted to try, on me or with
There's
me.
some good tips. Yes.
Boy, I know I'm like the poster child for being used and abused, but I did want to go over and thank our sponsors. If I may, Miss Brown, take a minute.
Absolutely.
Our sponsors here, We're Cutie. I want to thank them. They've been a home away from home. Dan Kite, the CEO of We're Cutie, is offering shared spaces at a special rate. So if you want to contact us or IM us at Our CEO Network for details, you can take care of that. I want to thank Insight Productions for setting up the video feed and everything you're seeing here today. Gabriella Chaidez from DSODIA, social media, Great American. Title's always been a well-renowned sponsor. If you want to keep following us here on Facebook, you can just hit the little like button, but we also have different platforms too. We have Instagram and LinkedIn. So if you want to sign on and check us out on those links, as well as rceonetwork.com, I'd appreciate it. Stick around for a little bit, ask questions from Ms. Brown, because she is a licensed therapist and she can kind of help you at least assist a little bit and maybe fill in the gaps of what we're trying to do. But Ms. Brown, again, thank you for coming.
Sure.
What can you do, or at least what can you demonstrate for the people watching right now that will help kind of facilitate that? Because again, you mentioned people are home, people got kids. I was on a Zoom call last week. You hear some dogs in the background, and that heightens anxiety, right? That like you're trying to be very professional, and then you got kids running back and forth, and you got dogs barking over here, or you got the TV that just came on. Or for me today, I had some anxiety. This whole banner back here fell over, and I was
absolutely. Well, even simple things like things you wouldn't think of, like people are ordering things off of the internet all the time, having deliveries. So
oh boy,
that's deliveries come, but now you're home when these deliveries show up. You hear that doorbell ring. I mean, how many people actually have people come over? I'm not much right now. So that even causes anxiety. So there are a lot of things that that you can do just in your own home too. Things like so I know some of these might sound funny, and that's fine, but things like just like acknowledging your environment, getting yourself into a quiet place. And even if you can't sit in a quiet place, things like recognizing what is around you, that recognizing small things. There's a technique, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you engage all of your senses. And so it's like, so look at look at 5 things around you in your environment, recognize those things, acknowledge them, and then hear 4 sounds that are taking place in your environment. Touch 3 things that are within your reach. Smell 2 things that you can smell, a candle, your cup of coffee that you're drinking. And then the last one thing, taste something, taste your coffee, taste your water. Just getting out of your head and recognizing like your environment definitely helps. Doing deep breathing techniques, deep diaphragm breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth like you're blowing out a candle.
Oh boy.
That definitely helps. Those little stress balls, like having one of those in your hand, squeezing it, or even your pets, like having them lay on your lap and pet them, and those are all like self-soothing techniques. Those things can really make a big difference in your level of anxiety. And I think one of the most important things is recognizing where your anxiety is coming from. If it's coming from the dog barking, or if it's coming from your kids running around, you can take control of that situation. Do things with your pet, like go throw the ball for your pet, or make your pet happy so they will stop barking, and that'll make you happy in turn. If your kids are jumping off the couches and running around and running in and out, sit down at the table with them for 10 minutes and color with them, or read them a book, or have them read you a book. I mean, just take 5 or 10 minutes out of your day, because everybody's feeling the stress. Your pets aren't used to you being home all day. Your kids aren't used to you being home or being in their space all day. So you have to recognize that as well, and just really involve yourself in it versus allow it to cause you negative stress and try to push away from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Does therapy ever get into religious? I know there's at least the religious aspect. I know like for Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff, they lean on more of like kind of a spiritual kind of backing. Is there kind of therapies that can be facilitated with, or is religion a therapy in itself?
Religion could be a therapy in itself, absolutely. I mean, that again is going to be based off of the relationship between you and your therapist. If that's something culturally that you want to incorporate in your therapy, it can be absolutely incorporated in your therapy. It really depends on the client. Every single therapy session is different every single time with every single person. So you never know what to expect. You did touch on substance abuse a little bit. I know that right now everybody's at home and stress levels are high, and they maybe use coping skill, alcohol and or drugs for coping skills.
I think about every 4th or 5th Facebook post is somebody like drinking wine.
Sure.
wine.
Sure.
We just had
Yes.
Wine Wednesday or Wine Down Wednesday.
It's important to recognize when you use that as a coping skill, if and or when it crosses a line to something that you're more dependent on. So with that said, I think that if you would come home in the evening and have a drink and that was your routine, and you're not letting that affect any other aspect of your life, fantastic, continue to do it. But it's important to recognize when the drinking or the substance use is controlling you versus you having control over it, if that makes sense.
So I guess, how do we identify that? Because it's hard. And believe me, when I was working for CPS, I think for a lot of people, it's difficult to kind of understand lines that are crossed, because you kind of justify kind of what you're doing. And again, that's my experience. And I don't know what yours is or what your perspective would be, but it's real hard for people kind of to distinguish what line is crossed, because they kind of justify it all the time.
Sure, it's easy to justify it. Absolutely, I hear what you're saying. I think that it becomes a problem when you're spending up more money than you should be spending on it. When it becomes a priority over other aspects of your life that should be more important priorities, like your children and your job. It becomes a concern when you're not engaging in activities that you normally would engage in because of the drinking. I think that if that starts to consume your day, then it's becoming a problem for sure. If it's taking over your time and your space.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're allowed to give an example, or at least kind of share an experience you had with somebody that's kind of overdone it, or at least like I said, somebody that's involved in the abuse where it got too far, where they just didn't expect it to?
I can give it a general example
Yeah, or a
of it.
general one.
A general example, sure. Um, so for instance, someone who, enjoys a happy hour a couple of times a week. That's fantastic. They go out, they have a couple of drinks with their friends, happy hour, making sure that you're safe driving home, making sure that you're responsible, you're Ubering, things like that. And then the drinking becomes more frequent. Happy hour becomes every day. And then you start taking risks, driving your own self home after you've had a drink, or not even wasting your time going to happy hour anymore because you just want to get home and drink. And then a couple of drinks turns into a couple of bottles of wine, or a 6-pack of beer versus 1 or 2 beers. Everybody's going to have different tolerance levels. Everybody's going to have different opinions on that, I'm sure. But from my experience and my opinion, that's when it crosses the line. And you can see your progression for that. I mean, it's important to step back and say, okay, when was the very first time I had a drink? And what did that look like? And where am I now? And am I happy with that? I mean, am I really okay with the way I'm behaving and the money I'm spending and the things that I'm doing, the decisions I'm making? And so I think for obviously each person, that's going to be different, but it's important to step back and really take a look at you as a person, you as a whole, and ask yourself if you're really happy with that person, if that's who you want to be.
And so I think, when it comes to therapy and it comes to some of these things, people look for an immediate fix. And I think alcohol is kind of one of those immediate, like, I had a bad day, I took a glass of wine, I automatically feel better, and I know there's medications and stuff that people take to automatically feel better, so do you want to talk a little bit more about what medication is versus what therapy is, or is there a difference?
Well, there's definitely a difference, and that's what earlier when we were talking about psychiatry, psychology. That those are going to be the individuals, or your primary care physician, I guess, too, can prescribe medications for that. If you're talking like prescribed medications, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
No, no,
prescribe
no.
medication.
Yeah.
I don't. A lot of my clients do take medication. They do see psychiatrists. I mean, that's definitely an option if you feel like that is something you want to have a discussion with your PCP, your primary care physician. I recommend that you do that. I mean, medications aren't for everybody. There's certain diagnosis, there's certain reasons, certain things that you take medications for. If you can manage your anxiety and your stress without medications, I would recommend that you try that. Try your coping skills, try your grounding techniques, your relaxation techniques, your self-care. See if it's something that's manageable without medication. And if it just gets to a point where you aren't able to manage it anymore, then reach out to your medical provider and get referred from there and see what they say.
And that's good too. So I didn't know if you wanted to put up. You sent me some links and some phone numbers to call. One was regarding a substance abuse.
Absolutely.
Let me share it now, and maybe you can kind of talk about each one.
Okay.
So the first number you gave was the substance abuse hotline. Do you want to kind of share some experiences, or at least why you?
It's a great This is a great website that's offered by the state of Arizona. If you click on that link there, you're going to get a ton of resources for substance abuse, alcohol abuse. There are some resources on that link for family members, for friends, for opiate abuse. There's just some great information on that website. I highly recommend if you feel like you need any of these things, that's a great place to start. There's also the substance abuse hotline, the treatment hotline. If you're having a bad day, if you feel like you're going to relapse, if you don't want to drink anymore or use drugs, I mean, this is a great helpline to call. There are some really knowledgeable people that'll answer the phone and walk you through some stuff. So it's a great resource. The suicide prevention and domestic abuse, I mean, those are also things that I feel really passionate about. It's with the stress, with being at home, like I said, all these additional stressors and having to learn to kind of relive, I guess, from what we considered normal. You could be feeling really stressed, like you're hopeless, or there are there's nothing you can do to make things better. I mean, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or suicide, or you know somebody who might be, these are great resources for that. I highly recommend calling that suicide prevention hotline. There's also an Arizona crisis hotline. So those are great resources too. And with you being at home with your spouse or significant other all the time, I mean, there very well could be a lot of tension going on in the house. So if you know of anybody or yourself is experiencing any kind of domestic abuse, I highly recommend you reach out to the domestic abuse hotline or the website. It has a great, that's the National Domestic Abuse website. It has a ton of resources on there as well. So, and I just threw in the Fresh Start Women's Center because it's one of my favorite places. When I was doing general mental health, and still today, I would recommend that my female clients just check it out. They offer a ton of resources for women, women in the community who want to get back into the workplace if they have been home with their children for years and years, and now the kids are in school, mom's wanting to get another job or start a new career. They offer a ton of stuff. Domestic abuse counseling. They offer career counseling. They offer just a ton of workshops for women. It's great. And I apologize for not throwing something up there for all you guys, but that's just one of my favorite places.
And then you had some grounding techniques to help anxiety there?
There are some we can review those if you want to. I don't know how much time we have before our next break, but if you go to that website, there's like that website right there gives you, I think, 30 different grounding techniques you can use to help manage your anxiety. And it's a really great website to go to because all these grounding techniques you can do just like sitting in your own home, like right where you're at or in your car or wherever you're at. So if you feel anxiety coming on or you're experiencing a level of anxiety that you think you're not going to be able to manage with how you normally manage it, I would recommend using these grounding techniques versus reaching for the alcohol or the drugs, obviously. So some of the grounding techniques that are on this website that I recommend, the one I explained to you already, the 5-4-3-2-1, that's pretty cool. So basically a grounding technique is going to be getting your mind off of the anxiety and into a different place. So do you want to talk about that when we come back?
Oh, look at that. Look at it. She knows me so well. It's the half-hour mark, and I do have to take a small break and thank our sponsors. The guys at, let's see, get that back up. So the Workuity, again, home away from home, Dan Kite, Workuity, thank you for being one of our major sponsors. If you need any office shared space needs, please contact us here at ourceonetwork.com or at Our CEO Network Facebook. You can IM me any questions you have relating to Workuity. DSODIA, Digital Social Media, we have Gabby Chaidez, who is the owner and sets up these interviews for us. Inside Production sets up our video. Great American has been a long sponsor for us, and I appreciate their help, as well as our sites here too, at Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Please check us out and like us as you can. If you're still watching us, please share, make comments. We're going to be answering some questions as we go along with Miss Brown, who is a licensed clinical therapist for the state of Arizona.
There is a question. What about people who can't sleep due to anxiety or stress? Okay.
That's all you.
Right? Okay, we'll talk about the grounding techniques can help with sleep as well. So
we'll get into the grounding stuff.
Yeah. So sleep is super important. Again, getting things out of your head. So you're not sleeping because your anxiety is super high or you're extremely stressed, your heart rate's up, your blood pressure is probably elevated, your mind is racing, and there are a million things going on inside your head that you just can't put to the side so you can get some decent sleep. Again, writing things down on a piece of paper, getting things out of your head on paper, organizing the things that are causing the stress, recognizing what's causing the anxiety and stress, and addressing it. You controlling the stress versus the stress controlling you. If I'll just give you an example. If you're stressed because your day the following day, you have 13 things that you have to accomplish and you don't know where to start. And so you just have all of this stuff running through your head. Get a piece of paper, write all those 13 things down, then list them from most important to least important. What do you absolutely have to accomplish versus what can wait to maybe the day after or the next week? So getting things out of your head and really just being able to relax. You can also download apps on your phone. Like white noise is a good thing to like maybe play in the background at night or when you're trying to fall asleep. That helps some people sleep. Some meditation, doing a little bit of meditation. You can also like find meditation videos on YouTube or download meditation apps you can play on your phone and do a little bit of meditation before you go to sleep. Listening to some your favorite music. I don't recommend like really loud screaming music, but if you can,
No heavy metal.
exactly, if you can engage in some calming music or, you know, like sounds of water, or even like doing things like buying a little fountain that you just plug in, you can put on your dresser and turning that on at night, like just hearing like the sound of water flowing. It's a really good way to like focus on that versus what's going on in your head, and it definitely helps you fall asleep and get better rest at night. I know it sounds kind of funny, but it really does work.
So you're saying, and I guess there's some debate or at least some questions on a clinical level, what causes dreams and whether or not they're influenced by stress of your day. But I don't know how much experience you've had, or you can describe where dreams come from.
You know what, I have very little experience with that. I'm going to be honest with you. Dreams are, I have some experience with night terrors, but that's coming from people who have experienced pretty severe trauma because I am a trauma therapist. So if you're experiencing night terrors, I definitely recommend that you see a counselor. Absolutely. That person can help you work through those. But as far as like dreams go, I'm not really sure. Like, I think that the more calm we are before we go to sleep and the happier we are, the happier our dreams are. But that's just from personal experience. So
I like to play Uno before I go to sleep. So
play Uno.
I don't, that might be stress inducing though, too, because if you're not winning,
I feel like it's that stress inducing.
I get a little app, you know, kind of do that. But again, I want to reference again that your experience, and you mentioned it again, is that with the more severe kind of society, and I think a lot of people kind of point the finger and say, well, that's them, you know, I can manage my own things. You know, is there things that people can look out for that would give a good indication for them that things are not well or things are not going well? Because
sure. And you're right. I mean, a lot of people are able to manage their stress and their anxiety, and I think that it's important to recognize you, like I said before, when you're experiencing stress, how do you manage it? How long does it last? How does it make you feel? Are you so stressed that it lasts for days, or is it something that lasts for 5 or 6 minutes and you're able to get it under control and reground yourself and move on? Are you allowing the stress and anxiety to take over, to control you? Is it all that you think about? Are you actually like experiencing like anxiety attacks or panic attacks? When it gets to that point, then it has started to control you. So that's when you reach out for help. Like I said, counselors, therapists, life coaches. I mean, you can even like I said, natural supports are fantastic. So if you can just reach out to your friends or your family or your neighbor to talk things through, really, I think that's a great resource. Once your anxiety and your stress starts to consume your day and consume your sleep, then that's when I feel like it's time to reach out for help. And not everybody likes that, you know, there used to be this stigma on behavioral health that they're going to think I'm crazy, but you know, that's not how it is anymore. It's kind of popular. Everybody wants to be happy and healthy and be the best person they can be. And if you're not able to do that, if you're not able to get to that point and you need some extra help, get it. It's fantastic.
yeah, and I think to share my experiences, you know, when I was in counseling too, I mean, you actually know, you know, more about me than most, but yeah. But when I was going to counseling too, what helped was that kind of early identification of where things and how things manifest in your life today. there's so many things that happen when we're younger that we really don't realize. And even some of the surrounding things, like if we experience some sort of trauma, like I think spanking was one of the big ones, for a 5-year-old, and I got spanked a lot.
Sure.
I won't I won't tell you why, but as a 5-year-old, that's significant trauma. And if your dad liked playing I don't know, R&B music while he spanked you, you could have experienced trauma just by listening to R&B music as an adult. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can share any experience you've had with that, or at least knowledge
Yeah, I
regarding
mean,
that.
you bring up a good point. Like, if you are recognizing that your anxiety or your stress is happening at certain times of the day, or when you hear certain things, like if things are triggering it, like you said, that R&B music would have been a trigger for you. So it's good to keep track of that. So if you are recognizing that, and you can kind of journal it or just write it on a piece of paper, keep track of it, then you can recognize, okay, so every time I hear this one song, my heart, races. I get a level of anxiety, my blood pressure raises,
Yeah.
I get angry. So you can teach yourself, you can learn to avoid things like that. So if you recognize triggers, get them out of your life. Don't have anything to do with them. Avoid them at all costs. If you can't avoid them, then you can do your deep breathing techniques. You can phone a friend. You can, do some self-soothing, like, just petting your animal, or, I mean, even holding on to an ice cube is, I know that sounds odd, but it definitely is going to take your mind off of what you're thinking about. And, oh my gosh, this ice is so cold in my hand. And miraculously enough, before you know it, your anxiety level has calmed down. You're focusing more on how cold your hand is versus what's going on in your head, and you're able to ground yourself. If you're driving back to work, like you have been home for 2 months and you're getting ready to go back into the office, that's going to be an anxiety. That's going to raise level of anxiety. I mean, let's just be real. It's either going to be good anxiety because you're excited to get back to work, or bad anxiety because you don't know what to expect or what's going to happen. Do I even have a job when I get back there? Do some of these grounding techniques in your car on the way to work. Do some deep breathing. Look at some 5 things, recognize 5 things around you, hear 4 things in your car, taste your coffee, smell your coffee, recognize, what's going on, and just calm yourself down. I mean, you can use these anywhere. They're great.
And I will give a testimony to journaling, writing stuff down, and really you're really getting it out of there. And I say that from my own personal experience. You really kind of get it out of here and in front of you, like you're confronting your issues and deciding, what are you going to do with it at that point. So that for me has always been my kind of go-to, and the poetry too, but that's something else.
Well, and you said, like, when you're journaling, it's good to do that too, because you can kind of go back and like look at it later, like write it all down, and then like the next day or a week later, go back and like really read what you wrote. Look at the list that you created that was causing you so much stress the day before, and really reevaluate it. Like, was it really that stressful, or was it just in that moment? I mean, was it just a circumstantial little bit of stress, or is it really something that I need to deal with that I can't deal with on my own, or I can deal with it on my own in this way and make a plan? So I think that that's important too. So journaling, writing things down, I love it. That's one of my favorite things, one of my favorite techniques.
Do you think people have anxiety by discovering what's written down? Because sometimes it can get really sensitive, and writing your feelings down and having somebody discover it, especially the person you wanted to tell, or probably it's about. I think that's a challenge at times too. But
that's true. I mean, if you're going to be concerned about that, I think that you can always just write it down and then read it to yourself out loud, or not out loud. Talking to yourself is also a good coping skill. I know that sounds funny, but it's true. So you can take all your writings and read them and keep them as long as you feel necessary. Put them in place where you can hide them. Throw them in the trash. Hey, if it's going to help you feel better to take them out back and, well, I don't want to say burn. You really can't start things on fire without getting in trouble. But, get rid of it. Throw it away. Get all that anxiety out. Crumple it up in a ball and put it in the trash. Put it through your shredder. That is going to release some of that tension, some of that anxiety. Sure.
That's perfect. So, again, I just want to thank everybody for logging in, and we will take questions as we go along. I did have a couple pre-questions that I had a couple of people ask. If you're up for it, Ms. Brown.
Sure. If I
Okay.
have the answer, I'll definitely answer them.
Oh boy. So we got Heather from Phoenix. I've been at home for the past several weeks, like everyone else. My kids frustrate me at times, and my last resort is to spank them. Is spanking effective? I have a 7 and 13-year-old.
I don't recommend spanking.
Oh.
Only because I feel like, regardless of how old your children are, you can still communicate with them. And really, communication is the key for everything. I know you've heard this a million times, probably from everybody, but being able to talk and communicate your feelings is really important. So communicating with your 7-year-old and your 13-year-old, is that what you said? 13 and 7?
13 and 7.
It's important. I mean, let them know how they're making you feel. I mean, put it back on them. Like, you tearing up my work that I was just, that took me 5 hours to write this report, and now it's shredded, or you dumped your milk all over. It's really frustrating. This makes me feel this way. And like really putting that back on them and explaining to them how their behavior is causing you to feel is going to help them recognize, okay, well, I don't want to make other people feel bad. They're going to stop doing it. You can also, one of my favorite things, like, I have a child, and there were times I wanted to just choke the life out of him. However, we had a think it over chair. So I would make him go sit in the think it over chair, and he would sit there until I tell him that, this, you got to think this over for 2 minutes. You're going to think this over for 5 minutes. And he would sit there, and I would make him think about what he did and what the benefits were from it, and what the negatives, what the consequences were from it. And, how did this benefit him or anybody else in the house? Then we had to sit down and have a conversation about it when he was done in his think it over chair. So, I mean, I even recommend that for couples who are having issues and fighting. If there is a place in your house that you can designate for you and your significant other to go sit and have a conversation, or to just go sit by yourself and think over what you want to say to your spouse before you actually do, it's really therapeutic, and it's definitely beneficial for the relationship, the family, and for yourself. So I think it's really important to think things through before you act on them.
Well, and let's say you do have kind of a oppositional spouse, and not necessarily domestic violence, because I think most people, have a spouse or a partner that's kind of, I'll give you an example. My dad is really against therapy, and then when my parents have problems, they kind of, I think they want to talk it about more, but there are couples out there that kind of view therapy as like, it's one of those, is there any skills or techniques that you can get to have your spouse open up a little bit more, or at least kind of talk about or process? I know the word process is one of those keywords, how to process through some of those things to kind of continue that conversation.
Absolutely. So I think an important thing to recognize is, are you easily approachable? So ask yourself, like, if you were your spouse, would you want to walk up to you and have a conversation with you? Or are you intimidating? Are you one-sided? Do you always, do you give pushback? So make yourself approachable for your spouse or your significant other, and explain that to them. Again, talk to them. Like, I see that you're having an issue. I feel like there's tension in the room. I feel like there may be something wrong. Let's go to our safe place and sit down and have this conversation when you're ready. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, but it's never good to hold it in for a full day. You don't want to sleep on it. You need to get it out. So I think that making yourself approachable is really going to be the key to successful communication in your relationship. Even at work, at home, with your friends, make yourself approachable. Don't make yourself, make yourself approachable, not a target. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And I was just thinking about the ability to do that. I mean, it's it's really difficult for people to open up, period. Because, I think from my experiences too, when you approach people, they're very cut off and they don't know how to respond. And is there ways to help people kind of open up a little bit more, or at least listen,
Um,
that you can think of?
Definitely being an active listener is really important. Yeah, you can. Well, I think, how can you listen better? Just eye contact, just paying attention to your tone of voice, their tone of voice, how you react to somebody. I mean, your body language when somebody's talking to you is a huge factor in how they feel like you're listening to them. So if you're engaging with them and you're feeling like it is, it's, even if the topic isn't important, just your body language needs to be open and comforting, and like, don't cross your arms and have a scowl on your face. Like, make eye contact with them, be relaxed when you're hearing them talk to you.
Perfect. Okay, so we got off topic a little bit, but there was one more question that I had. I don't know if there's any more. If I can check. Let's see. My name is Greg from Mesa. My name is Greg, and my name is Greg, and I admit that I'm a hypochondriac. I get really sweaty and nervous leaving the house. Is this normal? I guess he's referencing kind of what's going on with COVID and stuff. Is that something that he needs to kind of explore, or at least get into therapy for?
Well, I don't necessarily think that. I mean, I guess it depends on what his view of a hypochondriac is. I mean, just because he's nervous leaving the house right now,
Severe
everybody's
germaphobe?
nervous leaving the house right now, right? If you're nervous leaving the house, do take precautions. Wear your mask outside. Just only go to the places that you need to go to. Call somebody. Have somebody talking to you on the phone when you're leaving the house, like giving you some supports. If it's something that you feel like is controlling you, and you're not leaving the house and avoiding like important appointments or important, like your job, if it's affecting your job, if it's affecting your physical health, you're not going to doctor's appointments because you're afraid, yeah, you probably should get some help. But if you can manage it, I mean, right now are scary times. A lot of people are scared to leave their house. A lot of people are scared I even find myself like walking a little bit farther around people in the grocery store. And it's sad, but it's true,
It drives me crazy
So,
when I can see somebody coughing from a distance, and it's just like,
I know, right? That's true. And really quick too, like back to, if I can just reference back to a couple of things with the lady with the children.
yes.
Do some activities with your kids. Like when they're out of control and like going insane and you're going crazy, you can always do some things like creating things with them, like creating what am I trying to say? The positive affirmation jars with them, or like happy quotes with them. You can do this with your family, with your coworkers, with anybody. Like just sit down with people and write down happy things about them and put them in jars and make each person their own little jar. And that way every morning, you pull something out and read it to your son or your daughter or your spouse, and they do the same things for you. And that's going to keep smiles on people's faces. That's going to keep the morale up. That's going to make people feel good. You want people to feel good, and people want you to feel good. So that's a way to definitely engage in an activity that's going to take a while, and you can continue to engage in it day after day after day. And you can add things to those jars too. That's one of my favorite things to do. So if you need an activity to do with the family or coworkers, like I was saying, that is something I think that definitely helps everybody stay in a better mood, makes them feel better about themselves. And that's also a great way to open up lines of communication too.
Yeah, I like doing board games,
Board games, yeah.
I don't know if it's going to cause more anxiety to certain people, but one technique I used to use for my staff when there was and this is more in a business environment, when we had some dissension or we had an adverse employee who was just not communicating or not being part of the group, a great way that I found to do that was just board games. So during our management meetings, we would break away and place categories,
Yeah.
and I would intentionally place the adverse person with the most adverse person they felt with together in a team. And then they had to separate it from the current environment. So at that time was investigations. and we play this simple kind of seemingly innocent game, and over time it created a sense of cohesion and collaboration, but it took time. It wasn't overnight.
That's true. I played categories with you when I worked for you. Anyway, so yeah, no, you're right. That's true. It's really good. I mean, when we would, well, where I currently am employed, like when we'll have like team building meetings, and we'll do things like that. I know that a couple of our meetings, we've like created like vision boards for ourselves, and vision boards for our personal selves, and vision boards for our careers. And for our place of work, like where do I see myself in this job in 5 years, things like that. But like I was saying, those positive affirmation jars at work, we did that, and we had to create like a positive affirmation jar for the person sitting to the right of us or the left of us, and that may not have always been your favorite person at work, but you still had to think of 15 things to say nice about that person, or that would make that person's day, and create that and give that to them. So I think that there's a lot of activities that you can do for yourself, for personal building, as well as for your career building, that's going to benefit you, your career, your family, your coworkers, your children, everybody. It's just all about staying positive and communicating and being in control of your behavior, your words, your activities, your daily life.
That sounds perfect. I'm going to go ahead and put those numbers up one more time if you kind of want to go over each one just briefly, and any other information you want to provide, just in case somebody's not feeling well or not feeling like themselves. I mean, and I think some of these numbers are probably more on the extreme end. If you're not feeling safe, obviously,
Sure.
that's significant. If you feel like you want to hurt yourself, or if you're overdoing it and you feel like you're overdoing it, besides these phone numbers, is there other resources or other things that kind of help when you're not to that extreme, or like somewhere in the middle maybe?
These are really important. I mean, right now with everybody, with things changing, change is really difficult for people, and you never know how someone's going to react to change. I mean, there's a lot of people who are able to embrace change and really create something positive from it. And there are some people who just can't handle it at all. So I think if you're feeling like you can't handle it, if something's gotten away from you and you're feeling like you want to hurt yourself, it's really important to have a resource to reach out to. Again, the domestic abuse hotline, that's, if you know somebody who is in an abusive relationship, or you feel like you are and you're not sure if that's what it is, I mean, this is a great hotline to call. They'll answer a lot of questions for you and kind of define what domestic abuse looks like, and give you some resources that you can reach out to in your community. The grounding techniques, these are great for self-care. They're great for relaxation. They're great for you to teach your kids, you to teach your spouses. Maybe your family could all look at this website together, or similar websites, to get ideas of how to manage your stress. I mean, even like with your children, if your child is angry or anxious or feeling stressed, have them practice some of these. They're super simple to do. Other numbers, I mean, there are a ton of behavioral health organizations in the Valley that you can reach out to. You could really like go on a Google search if you wanted to, and reach out and find the best ones. There's great substance abuse treatment facilities in Arizona. There's great therapy. There's great individual therapy. There's group therapy. There are grieving support groups. I mean, you can find all of these things online. I guess it just depends on what you're looking for. Life coaches even are really cool. That's kind of a newer thing, but I mean, a life coach is a really great person to have on your side, kind of, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and is there any kind of therapy for because we know about couples? Is there therapy for like child and parent? Because I think with this whole COVID thing, you had dual income families, or parents going out and working. Now they're home. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm suspecting would cause a stress in itself. Is there parent-child counseling? Is there such thing?
Yeah, you could. Most behavioral health organizations in the Valley will provide family counseling or child and parent counseling. Absolutely, it's definitely something that that you can find it pretty much. From my experience, multiple facilities in the Valley provide that. There's also career counseling. There's career counselors out there that are awesome. So if you're struggling in your job, if you're struggling in your career, if you want to change your career, if you don't know what your future holds for you because of this whole COVID thing, and and your job is at stake, or maybe you've sat at home for 2 months and you've thought to yourself, oh my gosh, what I'm doing right now isn't what I want to do. I want to make a change. There are great career counselors out there too that can help you make that decision and help you work through it.
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaways for me are communication, one,
Yes.
surrounding yourself with positive people. And I think sometimes we don't always do
Yes.
that, or at least know who is a positive influence on us. Cause there are some people very close to me that aren't always the most positive people. I love them to death, but they can influence your thought process, and I think your perspective too. So we're coming to the near end of our journey together, Miss Brown.
I doubt that it's
Fabulous.
the end of our journey together, but for right now, yes.
Well, for
absolutely.
now, for this interview. And so one of the big takeaways was the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right?
That's super cool. It's a great thing. It's really easy to do. It takes a couple of seconds. You can do it all the time. Deep breathing too.
And any last bit of advice or anything you want to kind of share with people out there?
I think it's just important to really recognize your environment, recognize where you're at in your life, and just a cute trick is step out of your bubble, look in at your environment and ask yourself, am I happy? Is this really who the person I want to be and the things that I would want to do? And if it is, fantastic. If it's not, recognize what you want to change and just make those changes.
Well, that's well said, Miss. So I want to thank Miss Brown one more time. I do want to mention, again, find us here on Facebook at our CEO Network. .com and Instagram as well as LinkedIn. I'm going to show the suicide prevention hotline one more time just because I think it's important when you're in a situation to where things aren't going well and you just need somebody to talk to. And it may not be suicide or you're having negative thoughts about yourself. It's still a good place to call and get resources, even if you think it's not severe or think it's bad. Just know there's people out there that are looking after you and want to help. And you're not alone. I think at the end of the day, we are absolutely not alone. One more thing, again, to our sponsors, Workuity, DSODIA. If I can share that one more time somewhere around here. Maybe not. There it goes. Workuity, Inside Productions, DSODIA, Great American Title. Thank you for coming. Miss Brown, you're the best. I appreciate
Have
you.
a great day.
Thanks. And we will chat soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.